Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Gruesome and Grotesque video. As always, I just do these videos randomly when I come across something that I read online, either through the Google News app or through something else, through another resource. In this case, this has to do with an update associated with a story that recently occurred, and it has to do with a really tragic circumstance. This really hits close to home because I used to work in a fast food area back during my earlier days, so I know exactly like the situation here when it comes to the area that this poor woman essentially ended up dying in. But I'm going to present all the information here, showcase just how horribly tragic it is, and then give my own thoughts and opinions on it as well. And those of you as well that worked in the fast food area, let me know too if you know from circumstance exactly just how cold this area can be that I'm going to feature here in a minute. But it has to do with this. It's about the poor restaurant manager who died being trapped in a fast food freezer. So let's go ahead and let's share that information here. And then again, I'd love to hear what your own comments are as well. So this was a situation that just recently occurred. It basically happened back on May 11th of this year. And it was at an Arby's. This was at an Arby's that was there in Louisiana, and it was at a location that was being managed at that time by a woman by the name of Guyette Lee. I hope I'm saying that name correctly. I believe the N is silent in this case, but otherwise I believe that's how the name is said. But yes, she was 63 years old. She was actually someone that was managing a location in Houston originally, but as it turns out, her supervisor had decided to have her work, at least temporarily, at a store there in New Iberia, Louisiana. I don't know if this was a brand new location or if something else happened and they needed someone to help cover, but it was going to be her covering it for a few weeks. But where things start turning even more tragic, one of those situations of if but the fact for is this. Her stay was extended by yet another week there as well, and that's when this situation happened. She was there, and then apparently her own son also worked there as well. I don't know if he was covering it, but the way I was reading this information, this location was about 3 hours away from the location that she usually managed. I believe she was a supervisor within one of those areas there in Houston. And in this case, she was going to be at this location during that time period. What a long drive, too. If it truly was a daily drive, then that's incredibly long. Or if they were staying there and everything was I guess comped and so on, who knows. But her situation was she was there, she was opening up that store, like doing all the pre-work that's associated with anything involving the usual day or the start of the day, and this all happened on May 11th. Now I'm going to interject here by mentioning I know exactly what she's talking about. Well, I mean, what the stories are talking about when it comes to what she was doing, because I used to do that as well. Back in my earlier days, I used to work at certain fast food chains. And in those days, I used to also help open those locations. And it's pretty early in the morning. Absolutely. Like you're there a good couple of hours beforehand. You're doing all the prep work. You're basically doing everything in terms of cutting all the vegetables and then making all the meat, making sure that that's ready, making sure that the location, the fryers, the bread, I remember making onion rings as well, getting the ice going, all that stuff. All that stuff takes time. You do it there hours before the restaurant actually opens. So I totally imagine, like in her case, on that fateful day on May 11th, she was doing the very same thing, which would have meant she would have been by herself. Now, I've never been in that situation where it was by myself doing the actual opening. Instead, it was always with the actual manager. I was just a regular worker, but it could be in her situation that because she was the supervisor itself, that she was the one doing it and nobody else would be needed, which is what led to the next tragic thing. Now, apparently there at that specific location, there was a freezer door. Now, those of you that have worked again in fast food, let me know, because this is what I remember as well. There's the walk-in freezer, And then that's where you have the usual stuff, like maybe involving French fries or other type of items, and then maybe some of the meat there. But otherwise, there's also a freezer. Like there's actually the smaller one inside the walk-in freezer, and then that's where you have all the cold meats, like the ones that are frozen solid. That's the one where it gets super cold on the inside. So the walk-in ain't so bad. Like it's cold, but it's not sub freezing. But the other one absolutely would be. And so apparently at that location, I can't tell if it was either the actual freezer door or the one involving the meats. But either way, though, they had a problem. It turns out that that freezer door wasn't working. It wasn't something that was apparently fixed. Who knows how long it had been going. I was reading various stories stating that it was broken since August of last year. And the way it goes is that the employees there at the time were using both a screwdriver to help open and close the door, and then also use a quote unquote box of oil to keep the freezer door open. So my guess is that the door itself clearly didn't work. It needed to have a screwdriver, I guess, to pry it open, and then a screwdriver to help close it, and then that box of oil to basically keep it open midway or something like that, kind of like a little ledge to make sure that it doesn't shut on someone whenever they're inside that part there. Well, as you can think of what happened next, like the most horrible situation possible, there she was. Think of it, like this is the way it worked. Like these are the tragic set of circumstances that led to this. Here she was assigned to another location, different from her place. On top of that, she was extended by another week. And then on top of that, she was there in that early morning just by herself. And on top of that, she was there at a location with a freezer door that wasn't working, that apparently had been cited and complained about by employees for those times of months and shown to supervisors beforehand as well, but apparently nothing had been done. And then sure enough, once she was in there, the door apparently closed. It shut in on her. Who knows how that happened? Maybe the leverage just wasn't there. Maybe the oil was slippery. Something happened, but it caused the freezer door that she was in, which I'm guessing is the one that again had those really, really cold meats, like the freezer, that caused it to shut on her. And now she was trapped. And where things get so gruesome when it comes to this story is this. Once she was found, she was clearly dead at that point. More on that here in just a minute. But when she was found, it was noted that she had beaten her hands bloody trying to escape or trying to get someone's attention. That's coming directly from an Arby's manager. And where it gets even worse is this. Her son is the one that found her. He showed up later on in the day, I'm guessing to help open as well, right when the place was probably going to start its daily hours. And then that's when he found her. He found his own mother there in the sub freezer, and then there she was completely dead, frozen, had bloody hands everywhere, as obvious that she was trying as hard as she could to try to get out. But with that door closed and the way it was closed, there would be no way essentially for her to be able to get out, at least based on all the information I was reading associated with the screwdriver being needed and of course some leverage to make sure that door didn't shut. The absolute worst thing that could happen happened at that exact moment. And there she was, this poor woman, Guyette Lee, 63 years old. She was widowed. She had 4 children as well. And as you can tell from the story I just mentioned a minute ago, one of those children working with her at that location. Just an absolute, just horrible situation altogether. Very tragic. And I feel so sorry about what happened. Somebody goes into work that day, right? And they never imagine that something like this would happen to them. And then, of course, the family members and what they have to go through as well. All of this is just horribly wrong. But yeah, the reason why this got an update was because now those family members are suing Arby's. They're suing the company that owns that chain. And then I guess the company overall that owns the entire holdings associated with Arby's and then Burger King and Applebee's, and they're suing for $1 million, stating that because they showed negligence when it comes to fixing this freezer door, and it had been going on for 9 months, no less. This, of course, obviously led to their mother, to Guyet Lee, dying at that location very tragically. And then because of it, that's when it's their fault, is what they're claiming, and it's their turn to go to court and then have this punishment given to them. I actually had to look up some information too to see like what happens, because in her case it's hypothermia. Whenever something like that occurs and the body is in a very cold temperature, I was reading some information online that it takes, if something is 30 degrees below zero, it can take as little as 10 minutes for hypothermia to start setting in. The story I was reading was stating that the temperature inside that freezer, the one holding the meat, was negative 10 degrees. So not quite as cold, but obviously still very cold. So in her case, it would have been at least 10 minutes plus for hypothermia to start setting in. And then that's where it gets into that horrible situation of people having those side effects, like where that's where the body starts shutting down, people start getting sleepy, they start getting confused. And then, of course, everything else happens afterward with the body just succumbing to the actual freezing conditions. But that's what happened to her. She must have realized it as quickly as possible, trying to get attention, banging on it. Those of you that have worked there, again, just like I did in the fast food world, you know how big and heavy those doors are. They're made out of metal. Like they have those components on them that make them very, very heavy, very solid as well. If it's locked, it's locked. There's no chance for anybody on the inside to have been able to escape, and hardly any chance for anybody on the outside as well to have heard anything along those lines. I very much doubt, even if people were in there, if other coworkers were around, let's say they were at the fry station or maybe they were at the soda area, if they would have, she could have been pounding on that freezer door, which would have been, or that sub freezer door, which would have been inside the freezer door. It's pretty hard to think that something would have been heard. But either way, though, total negligence. This is absolutely just something that could have been prevented. And I'll follow up. I'll see what happens afterward when it comes to this case, this lawsuit, and see what occurs, what the results are, and then try to post a video associated with that too. But those of you out there, again, that worked in the fast food, let me know. Let me know if you've worked in that situation as well, if you know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to the components, the areas associated with the freezers, in the areas that make up the inside, and then let me know how dangerous that is. To working in fast food can be dangerous. I worked in there for a good number of years, high school, going into college as well, and everything was careful. Like I didn't have anything bad happen to me, and then others as well. Like that's one thing is the places that I worked at, they always were making sure that everything was super safe. So, but it's very easy to get hurt in one of those places when you're dealing with obviously those cold areas and freezers and getting locked in, like in this situation, or dealing with the grill that has very hot temperatures. Imagine like slipping onto it, or worse, like on the fry station, something happening, your hand goes in it and so on. Like it can be very bad very quickly, and you have to be very careful. But this is a horrible situation that occurred to this poor mother, and my condolences go out to her as to what the situation was. Very, very tragic. But let me know what you guys think. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.